Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sam. I'm a student of the Bible. I am a pastor. I've been a pastor for 22 years, and I'm a writer, and my training involves biblical studies, theology, and biblical languages. So today I want to talk about something that I see pop up a lot all over TikTok, YouTube, whatever, when we engage with biblical scholarship, and that is this phrase or this idea of the academic consensus or the consensus of biblical scholars. What is it, and why it matters, and maybe why it doesn't matter. That's what I want to talk about in this video. There's a great title for the video. All right, great. Okay, so the academic consensus, what is it? There's a lot of other biblical scholars on YouTube and TikTok, whatever, who have dealt with this topic, have talked about it. Really quickly though, because that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about why it matters and maybe why it doesn't matter. So really quickly, what it is any majority position in the field of biblical scholarship. When you have a topic or whatever, do a majority of biblical scholars agree with it? And so that's what the consensus would be. The overwhelming consensus would be like, 95, 98% of biblical scholars agree with this part of, this topic. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves, because we do know that there's a difference between critical scholarship and confessional scholarship. If you want to see, I talked about that in one of my videos a couple days ago. There's a difference between those two. And so the question we have to ask is, okay, so are we talking about the academic consensus of the whole of the SBL or the Society of Biblical Literature? Or are we talking about academic critical Bible scholars or confessional scholars? Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about the consensus among scholars? Because there have been times when people have thrown around that term, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's true amongst all scholars. And so here's the deal. And both sides, critical and confessional, are guilty of this at times, of appealing to their base to talk about this. And so the critical scholars can be guilty of, when they say, well, that's the academic consensus, what they mean is that's the academic critical biblical scholar consensus. And a lot of times, some Bible scholars, not all Bible scholars, but some Bible scholars that are critical Bible scholars, really don't like to count the confessional scholars in their consensus, because they feel like maybe that muddies the water for them. I've actually seen a couple of different YouTube videos where critical scholars are like, maybe it's time to leave the SBL because the confessional scholars seem to be growing more and more, and it's really hard to get an accurate consensus amongst critical scholars, or amongst, when you pull everybody. You don't get you don't get a fair statement, because you get a biased statement with the confessional scholars. And so I think a lot of times when they say things like, this is the academic consensus among, whatever, I think a lot of times what they mean is amongst critical scholars. And confessional scholars are guilty of this too. When they talk about the consensus, this is our, the consensus position. What they mean is, this is our consensus position amongst confessional scholars. Very rarely is it like 99% of every single biblical scholar agrees on these finer points. It happens though. It does really happen. And those are usually like, well, duh kind of moments. But we just need to know that sometimes we can, whoever, confessional or critical, can be appealing more to the base of where they feel more comfortable in their scholarship versus the whole of the SBL. So so what is, the academic consensus? That's when scholars tend to agree on things, and when it's an overwhelming consensus, that means tons of them agree. And almost all of them agree. And then when it's like the overwhelming consensus among all biblical scholars, that means everyone, confessional and critical, pretty much agrees on this thing. Okay, so why does it matter? Here, I think it matters, especially if you're in postgraduate work. If you are working on your master's degree or your PhD in biblical studies, or some branch of biblical studies, knowing the academic majority positions and knowing the academic consensus is really important because when you're writing your papers, when you're taking positions on things, you need to know, am I taking a majority position here? Am I taking a minority position here? Am I going against the flow? Am I going with? Like, you just need to know that because, like, let's say I'm writing a paper for a master's thesis or, a capstone project or something like that. And let's say it's like, I don't know, Genesis 6. And I'm going to write on, the B'nai Elohim in Genesis 6, but I'm going to take the position that it's the sons of Seth, not these divine beings, the sons of God kind of a thing. I need to know, is that the majority position or is that the minority position? Am I arguing against a majority of scholars, and what are their positions? Because in your paper, you probably need to talk about if this is a minority position or a majority position, why you're arguing for it, who has made statements and why they made statements in the majority position, who agrees with you in the minority position. You need to have really good arguments if you're in the minority position as to why you think what you do and believe what you do. And so it's really important for people who are in the world of academia to know what the majority positions are, what the consensus positions are, and all of that kind of stuff. So it matters for those. It also matters, I think, to know for just a general public consumption, that there are maybe a bunch of biblical scholars who agree on this. And I think that's important to know. Like, oh, wait, I was taught this in my church, or I've always believed this because I read this. But a majority of biblical scholars disagree with this, and they find this to be true. Why? I think it's important for just people to know that kind of stuff. And the hard part is it's not been regularly accessible to the general public. And so some of these Bible scholars who are coming on YouTube and TikTok, whatever, are trying to make this stuff accessible. And I think that's awesome because then people can go, oh, and it kind of rocks some people's world sometime when they're like, wait, what? That isn't what I learned. That isn't how I grew up, and that's okay because I think it's good when we wrestle through this stuff and have to kind of work out what it is we actually think and actually believe when an opposing position or a position that we thought may have been majority is actually in the minority or something. Why it doesn't matter. So here's the deal. Just because a bunch of people believe something doesn't exactly make it true, doesn't exactly make it authoritative. And so we need to be careful in appealing to authority and appealing to majority and consensus positions all the time and saying, well, that's why we believe this. It just means that everybody agrees. It's okay to disagree with the majority position. It's okay to disagree with the consensus position. And as long as you have really good reasons for doing that, as long as you have really good ideas behind why you're disagreeing with those positions, then it's okay to disagree with them. But here's what I've been seeing, and this is what is a little concerning to me. What I'm starting to see on social media when it relates to people who disagree with positions or whatever, is kind of this like, I don't want to say identity political thing going on but it kind of feels like that sometimes, that like we run to our corners and we defend our corners. And so, if somebody makes a statement on if a Bible scholar who's a confessional scholar makes a statement online about something, in the comment section, you can guarantee or bet that there's going to be people who are going to be like, well, that's not the majority position, that's not the consensus position, that's not the scholarly position. And it's like, well, time out, that may not be the critical position, but that may be the confessional position. And you usually see a lot of that people who don't really understand the consensus and how that works, and maybe it's just amongst the critical scholars who think that, not the whole of the SBL. And so this maybe represents a viewpoint within the SBL, not the consensus among critical scholars. But you get a bunch of armchair quarterbacks who then come into the comment section and basically no true Scotsman, a confessional biblical scholar, when it's kind of like, well, the biblical scholars believe this, and the scholar goes, I'm a Bible scholar, I don't believe that. And it's like, well, you're not a true Bible scholar because the true Bible scholars believe this kind of, and that's a dangerous position to be in when we start calling people not true Bible scholars because they don't agree with critical consensus positions. Okay, so we need to be careful when we talk about the consensus, because at the end of the day, consensus is just, hey, this is what a bunch of people think, and how they read it, and the consensus shifts. It does. If someone makes a really strong argument that everybody goes, man, we didn't think about that before, the consensus can shift sometimes. And it does shift. It shifts a lot of different places, and people change their minds about things because, you grew up reading things over and over again, and being taught one way, and then all of a sudden something changes it and they go, oh, we need to rethink that. And so we need to be really careful of, disparaging people who have spent a lot of their time working on Bible scholarship and all that kind of stuff, and just saying, well, because you don't agree with one position or another position means that you're not. And this is confessional scholarship people, the people in that camp are guilty of this also, very much so. Saying, pointing the finger across the aisle at a critical scholar or a critical scholars, people who like that kind of stuff, and going, well, that's not real. You're just, you're not real scholars. You're not real Christians. You're not real. And it just gets to this exhausting point of belittling the amount of work that people have put in to their scholarship, whether it's critical or confessional. And so I'm just of the opinion that, I'm super grateful for both, for critical scholars and confessional scholars, because they spend their lives working on this stuff and thinking about things and looking through the text and trying to help us understand what the text means, what it says, how we can try to understand original authorship, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just so grateful for that kind of stuff. And so I just want to be careful of pointing the finger across, even if you disagree with confessional or critical scholarship, let's just be careful in how the rhetoric goes and what we end up doing and saying about these people, because these people are really doing a lot of great work. So there it is. The academic consensus, why it matters, and maybe why it doesn't. Okay. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.